Thank you so much, and thank you everyone again for joining us on this third installment. More useful and practical information for you today. I want to again welcome my partner, Dr. Chaz Matu. Just checking in. Are you on the line?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Very good. I'm sure this works. Okay. So what have we done in the past two webinars? Hopefully that we've now established beyond doubt that your biggest edge in practice and for everything you want from your career is to provide an outstanding client experience. There's no better edge for you than this. And providing outstanding client experience is a great way to withstand the woes of the economy, because there's still, no matter what the economy is, still enough people who go to a place where they know they're going to get an outstanding service. However, we've also established that an outstanding client experience is not something that you want to leave to chance. It does not happen on itself. And an important component of an outstanding client experience is that it is consistent, because if it is not consistent, it teaches clients that this place is a place they cannot rely on. If they are not sure, absolutely sure that every time they contact this place that they're going to get an exceptional service. So in order for you to create a consistent, predictable client experience, you have to systematize it. And so we've suggested the model of a circle where everything flows from a station to another station through transition. So there's a station transition, and that we should also systematize the transitioning, not just the stations. So on our last webinar, we started discussing the first station, which is the telephone. Now we're going to go to the next station, which is the client has made an appointment and the client is about to come in. So we're going, in this webinar, we're going to focus not just on the next station, but also on the transition. In other words, how to prepare yourselves, how to prepare the first person who will be accommodating the client in the lobby, prepare them before the client comes in, so that the experience is outstanding and so that everybody wins. So the client has made an appointment, then what happens? You know, in most instances, what happens in practices is that's the end of it. That is because of the approach that an exam, an appointment is an event. If you recall, we discussed that the way we see this is the exam is a process. It is a link in the process. Therefore, once the client has made an appointment, it is a process, it's not an event. And therefore, if it is a process, it has ensuing steps that have to start triggering to fall into place so that when the client comes in, you're in charge of the client experience in the exam room. So the first thing you need to do is you need to prepare the person. Usually it is the receptionist who takes and makes the appointment. So he or she needs to prepare the record for the impending appointment.
Yeah. So that's a good point. What we mean by preparing is that somebody needs to know what kind of breed that somebody is bringing in, so that you are able to identify who's coming in and be able to greet them. And by preparation, we also mean that somebody needs to go through the chart and a file and try to identify what are the needs of the client and what are the needs of the patient based on the previous records. And if it's a new client, you hope that the receptionist have done a good job on the phone to collect all those needs. It's important what those are, because it's not about you, it's about the patient and it's about the client. And you must know their needs so that you can fill those needs.
So now, as soon as the receiver has been placed in its base, as soon as the call has ended, the next process is to think. And in order to help your receptionist think, they need to be aware of a statistical fact. It has been established that anytime a client brings a pet into the practice, no matter what for, between 2 to 3 other services are necessary. Every time a pet comes in, between 2 to 3 other services are necessary. Overdue services because of age, because of the body condition of the pet, because of previous recommendations. It's almost guaranteed that the next appointment that is being made in your practice today, if you go into the record and you know what to look for, you're going to find between 2 to 3 other services that that patient needs. Now, we cannot expect the clients to know that. They are not professionals, but we are. Clients only make an appointment for something they see. They don't make an appointment for something they don't see. And so if their pet scratches its ears, then that's what they're going to be making the appointment for. But the fact that their pet is overweight or the fact that their pet is 9.5 years old, they don't see that. They don't understand the consequences. We should. So as we move from the station, the phone call, to the next station, the client in the lobby, we need to systematize, we need to focus on the transition. And that transition is how do we prepare the record? How do we then educate the client on what else the pet needs? And then how do we transfer the responsibilities of taking care of continuing to educate the client once the client is in the lobby and then once the client is in the exam room, so that we dramatically increase the likelihood that the client will say yes. So once the appointment has ended, the receptionist needs to go to the client record, either physical or nowadays electronic, and he or she needs to know what to look for. Don't expect them to know how to do so without training them first. So you need to train them what to look for. Age, there should be some categories of things to look for, and they need to be recorded in a succinct and easy to identify manner, so that when the client shows up, somebody, if it's not the same person, somebody will have an easy job identifying what it is that they need to also recommend to clients. Now, why is this important? Because one of the weaknesses we have in veterinary medicine is because we do not see the value of educating clients before they come in for exam. We believe that the best time to educate clients on the service is when they are in the exam room. It is wrong. It is too late. Because if you can imagine, the client is in the exam room, the pet is sick, or the client is worried, or the client is in a rush. How open-minded is the client to hearing something else that they themselves don't understand, and therefore there is no perceived value? We know that when a client is uneducated about anything, that their quality of their attention is lower, that the chances that they will say yes to anything else is a lot lower. So when a client is uneducated, the client is unmotivated to do anything else. For instance, if a pet comes in for an ear exam and the doctor diagnoses dental disease and the doctor talks about dental care, that is an uneducated client. That's the first time they've heard about it. How likely are they to say yes? Just think about it. Now contrast that with someone who has gone to the record and has identified the fact that this pet has not had dental care in 3 or 4 years, that pet, because of its age, is very likely to have dental disease, and therefore it is a client that needs to be educated on the value of dental care before they come in, so that when the doctor talks about dental care, they will think, aha, I understand, somebody talked to me about this. Therefore, they're going to be more educated, more motivated, and therefore higher compliance.
And this could be all done on the phone, and then preparation can also be done while they're in the lobby. They don't have to hear everything firsthand inside the exam room. More the repetition, more the retention. And the preparation in the lobby doesn't mean that we're going to diagnose it. They're not going to say how to treat it. It's basically just mentioning that, oh, by the way, I know you're in here for ear itching, and definitely take care of it. However, I noticed that buddy has not had a dental for almost 4 years, or whatever the blood test or fecal, and just by passing a reference to it by the CSR or the receptionist should be a preparation that should be done and prepare client to hear it again in the exam.
Right. So we're not trying to get the client to say yes to dental care. We're not trying to get the client to say yes to a blood test on the phone. We're only trying to educate the client, to bring it to their attention so that when it is repeated systematically throughout the process, that when they ultimately hear it from the doctor, they're more likely to say it because they've heard it several times before. So let's say Mrs. Smith made an appointment to bring Buffy in for an ear exam, and then the receptionist checks the record afterwards, and lo and behold, the doctor had recommended dental care a year before, and the dog is also 10 pounds overweight. So we don't wait until the client comes into the exam room to remind him again. It's too late. Instead, what the receptionist does is the receptionist creates a list of the other 2 necessary services. Then the receptionist calls back, either right away or when it is time to remind them of the appointment. And then using a script, because we want the experience to be consistent. And the only way that the experience is consistent is when the person making that call knows what to say before they make that call. Remember when we talked about taking charge of your client experience on the phone. So you need to know exactly, they need to know what to say before they make that call. And then they need to tell Mrs. Smith that, yes, Buffy is coming in tomorrow for an ear exam, but by the way, we checked the record and we identified that a dental disease was diagnosed a year ago. Have you done anything about it? If the client says no, nothing, then there should be a script to express the concern about the fact that the dental disease a year later is probably a lot worse. We're not trying to get the client to say yes to dental care. That is too early. Instead, we're alerting the client that Dr. Davis is going to talk to her about the dental care, about dental disease. That's all. Now, we've planted the seeds. And if the whole process, again, the client in the lobby, that's another part of the process. It's not an event. Then the transition from after the lobby, which we'll cover next time, if the client continues being educated in a professional and engaging way when the client is in the exam room, the client is almost ready to say yes to everything the doctor is going to recommend.
Yeah. And not only all this is preparing the client, what I have observed, Steve, is that people, the team itself become educated in taking the best care they can. When we demand all this preparation from our team members to prepare the client, it prepares the staff as well. And they learn, they get educated on this, and why is all this important? Because in order to say it, they got to believe in it too. And as they repeat these things day after day after day after, their belief system develops, and their faith and trust in the service develops too.
So now 2 questions for you. These are rhetorical questions. You don't have to answer them now, but you may want to take them and look into them and ask your team about this, maybe your receptionist. Do we suffer from a chronic canceled appointments or no-shows? Is cancellation a big problem in our practice, or is it negligible? If yours is like everybody else around you, then I can assume that no-shows and canceled appointments are a big problem in your practice. And if you think about it, because the exam the canceled exam and the no-show is not an event, but a process. In other words, it is a link in a chain, and whenever that link is broken, not only did you lose the opportunity to take care of a pet, you've also lost an opportunity to continue building the relationship with the client. So therefore, we should strive to minimize canceled and no-shows appointments, and the best time to do so is before the client calls to cancel, before the client doesn't show. So that's, again, this is part of the preparing the client for the exam once the client has made an appointment. That is the best way to do it systematically. So now let's discuss how you can minimize no-shows and cancel appointments. So another question is, why do people cancel appointments overall? Why do people not show? Yes, there are always issues. There's always a case of an emergency. There are always conflicting schedules, yes. But this is the rare instance. In most cases, when people cancel or no-show, the main reason is they've lost the value in bringing the pet in. So even when a client calls and says, I want to cancel my tomorrow's appointment because I have a conflicting schedule, we don't necessarily buy their story. Why? Because if we buy their story, then who is in charge of the client experience? They are. If we are to take charge of the client experience, we need to assume, at least we need to give it a try to see through the veil. And the veil is, I have a conflicting appointment, I cannot make the appointment tomorrow. That is a cop-out. In most instances, that is an excuse. So if we know better, and if we want to stay in charge of the client experience, then we need to create another system, another protocol, or another script to go through this. We need to understand that the most likely reason they cancel or no-show is because they have lost the value in the service. How many times do clients make an appointment to bring in a dog who is coughing or itching or scratching, whatever it is, or limping, and then either the day of the appointment or the day before the appointment, the dog seems to be fine, and they lost the value in bringing the dog in. They don't want to bring the pet in. It involves a financial fee, and it involves time investment. If they lose the value, they don't want to bring the pet in. We know better. We know that disease doesn't go in a linear manner. We know that disease can wax and wane. We know that. They don't. They don't see. All they go about is what is now. And so if we understand this, then we need to be prepared. So when a client cancels, we need to understand, we need to agree with them. Yes, you may have a conflicting schedule. However, I want to tell you that what Buffy has, although Buffy may be doing better today, in fact, how is Buffy doing today? If the client says she's doing a little better, then right away you know why the real reason they didn't bring the pet in. And therefore we need to educate them that although the symptoms may have waned, it is still likely that something is going on, and therefore you want to keep that appointment. You stay in charge because you, as a professional, you need to be in charge of the client experience.
Absolutely. On that note also, because if you have other services that need to be caught up, that is another solid reason to keep that appointment or reschedule it and keeping control on the possible outcomes. Would we like to, just give up at that point, or would you rather have assume that it was yes, a schedule issue or some other issues? Assumption should be that there must be loss of value, and then create your thought process when you're calling back based on that thought process that yes, there must have been loss of value in this appointment.
So again, when it comes to cancel appointment, please educate your receptionist to not buy the story, to not take their story by its face value, and instead to assume that there may be a loss of value. Therefore, the remedy is to educate, to take charge, and to guide them that they still need to keep that appointment. And I tell you, it works from experience. Over the last few years, it works really great. Now, what about the no-shows? What can we do to minimize no-shows? There is a system for that too. And the system is to first ask yourselves, what do we do? What is the protocol in our practice once a client has made an appointment? When do we call? So if the client has made an appointment 2 days hence, when and how many times do we call to remind them of the appointments? And I can tell you from experience, what happens in most practices is the receptionist has the task of calling the client perhaps the day or the evening before the appointment to remind them. The receptionist may not understand how important it is to actually speak with the person when confirming that appointment. And so they want to do what they want to do. They know they have a task, call someone. They don't understand the value of speaking to a person, so they make that call sometime the day before, and they usually get the answering machine. And so they leave a message, and they think that their job is done. And then when the client doesn't show, everybody is surprised and scrambling to reach these clients, not realizing that perhaps something in the preparatory process, in the transition, after the appointment was being made, that something in that process needs to be improved. So here is a suggestion. At as much as possible, that confirmation call should be done with a person. I know that you don't know when the person is there. You don't know when they're going to be there. Nobody knows. Therefore, I suggest to try. I suggest to, instead of calling just once and leaving a message on the machine, instead call 3 times. So try different times throughout the day. Call in the morning of the day before the appointment day. If you get the answering machine, do not leave a message. Try again at lunchtime. Again, if you get the machine, do not leave a message. And then try again in the afternoon or evening. And then if still you don't get a person, then you leave a message. However, if you call 3 times, you would triple the probability of finding a human being. Because if we leave a message, we think our job is done. What if the client came in late and didn't think of checking their answering machine? Or what if some other family member picked that message and not thinking it is important, deleted it? Then the client doesn't show. The client simply forgot, and we assume that the client doesn't want to come in. So if no-shows are a painful occurrence in your practice, we need to have a system to minimize it. So call 3 times, and only the 3rd time leave a message. However, here's another part of it. If you call 3 times and you get to speak with the person in one of those 3 times, make a note of it. Perhaps in your area, in your practice, it is more probable to find a human being when you call at lunchtime, or when you call in the morning, or when you call in the evening. I don't know what it is, neither do you. Only testing will tell you. So you test, call 3 times. When you reach a person, you make a note of it. Somebody else calls for another appointment, and they reach a human being, perhaps the same timetable, then your conclusion is, although we are used to calling clients that hour during the day, perhaps 3 hours later or 3 hours before is when statistically we're more likely to speak to a person. Again, I want to emphasize it. When you reach a person to confirm the appointment, you're much more likely to minimize the no-shows, because when you reach a person, not only do you remind them of the impending appointment, but by design, the receptionist also has to remind them of the value of coming in. Although they've made an appointment the day before, and you're calling them the next day to remind them, don't assume they remember fully what the value of bringing the pet in is. So when you get to speak with a person on the phone, not only do you remind them of the appointment tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but they know what to say to show that there is value in bringing the pet in. why you've made an appointment, why it is important that the doctor takes a look at it, how we can help their pet get better, and how it is important for them that their pet gets better. All this needs to be incorporated in the preparatory process when minimizing no-shows.
Yes. You know, there is another purpose that we all need to train our staff is to expand the value, give another opportunity. You know, we are excited to see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Mrs. Smith, you know, we're excited to see you with Buddy tomorrow at 10 a.m. Do not forget to bring a fresh poop sample. Do not, this is like a reminder to get some of the things that otherwise people may not remember, they may forget, and it's like creating the value again and again before they even come in, and your compliance rate will go really, really high, especially with those preparations with the fecal samples and other things. So that should be part of every phone call that you make when it's appropriate for a wellness visit to remind people and again create a value.
Very good. So far we've covered the transition between the phone call and the next station, which is client in the lobby. Now let's focus on the next station now. Client is coming in. Remember, it is a process, and here is something important you need to understand, that your clients have antennae. When a client's got pull into your parking lot and into your lobby, those antennae extend out, and they'll look around, noticing everything that's going on. You may not have noticed it, but they do. And so from the moment that the client is pulling in, you need to stay in charge of that experience. So ask yourself, what is the experience that my clients are having of me, of my quality, of my ability as a doctor to take care of their pet as they pull in into my driveway? If you don't think it is important, I say that we judge a book by its cover. If the parking lot does not reflect the message that you want to carry as a doctor, as a practice, then it is incongruous, and therefore it will minimize your control over the client experience, and therefore it will minimize your ability to get them to say yes. And I tell you, a dust bunny under the bench in the exam room may negatively influence your ability to get them to do a hip replacement. That's how big it is. So a dust bunny is as important for you to be able to do a hip replacement as your ability to do it, because everything matters. Your clients perceive everything as they pull in. And if you want to be in charge of the experience throughout the circle, then you need not neglect any area, any spot on that process. So how does your parking lot look? It's not just a matter of having a pile of doo-doo in it, but is it welcoming for your practice? Is it, in fact, sending the message? This is an important question you need to ask yourselves and your team. And then how welcoming is the building? The exterior, I'm talking. The client is pulling in. The client is not in the lobby yet. But the client is already perceiving whether you are the right person for them, whether you're the right doctor, whether they should approve the services. Everything is taken into account. Everything that happens is taken into account. So how does the exterior look? If you don't pay attention to the exterior, it may negatively influence your ability to get them to say yes. And also one important question to ask yourself, how do our clients feel when the very moment they open the door? What is the perception of our practice? What perception do we want them to have the moment they open the door? If you've never thought of it, then perhaps it is the right time to do so. So now the client has opened the door. Now here's a big question for you. Have you ever been a client in your practice? Just think about it. You, the professional, you and your team, either walk through a back door if you have one, or even if you don't have a back door, when you walk through the front door, you treat the process as a professional. somebody who works at the practice, not as a consumer. So I highly, highly recommend, if you have not done it yet, to walk through the door, pull into your parking lot as if you are a client. Have somebody with you to have another set of eyes to look at things. Look around, not just for sights, everything. Smells, sound, energy, everything matters. So go through the whole process of pulling into the parking lot, opening the door, and looking at the lobby. What do you see? What do you smell? What do you hear? What do you feel about the lobby? Because what people feel about the lobby is going to go a long way toward their decision to say yes or no in the exam room. And also, how does the receptionist look? How welcoming is the receptionist the moment the client walks into the lobby? Everything matters. What is the first thing they perceive? If you walk into a business and the receptionist there is not even noticing you, is not paying attention to you, or is grumpy when greeting you, how is that affecting your willingness to give this business your money? Not much, not much. So if you are to take charge of that client experience, you also need to pay attention to how people are greeted by the receptionist, and we're going to talk about it in a moment. But for now, what is the first impression when they walk into the lobby? This is an important question that you have to ask yourselves and your team. And then if something is not up to you, the expectation, to the message you want to send, that needs to be worked on and needs to be improved. Okay, so now let's break it down into new clients and existing clients. So you've put in a lot of money, a lot of efforts to attract a new client. Excellent. The receptionist was able to get that new client, which we actually is not really a new client, but is a customer, to make an appointment. They're willing to try you out. They liked the experience on the phone enough that they want to give you a try. But don't forget, this is not really a client. It is a customer. What is the difference? A customer is someone who does not have a relationship with you. They don't know you. They're going by hunch. They hope that you will are the right person, the right clinic for them, but they don't know. So don't assume that there is trust there. There isn't. They're trying you out. Their antennae are longer and more sensitive than your existing clients who already have a relationship with you. Your existing clients may be somewhat forgiving, although not much, but your customers are not. They're not forgiving. And if you don't agree with me on this point, then go back and count how many customers you've had in the last year and how many came back 2 to 3 months afterwards. That will tell you what their impression was of the overall experience, including in the lobby.
Yeah, you know, I say even a client that we in our profession we call a client. Everybody who walks through the door, we call them client, and because it gives us a feeling of elevated relationship. However, like you said, and very well said, is it's not a client; it's just a customer. Even second time might be a customer, or maybe even third time might become somewhat client. And those people who we classify our old client or our previous clients, even they are always in danger of becoming a customer, because if we have not seen them for 6 months to a year or two, and we see them later again, they are always falling off the ladder. So it is very important for our profession to identify this weakness in our relationship, because we are looking for every single day for an improved experience. And when we don't get it, we are likely to fall off that connection that we have developed with the business.
So although you should always strive to provide outstanding client experience when they are in the lobby, especially so when it is a new client or a customer. So what you have in place currently show that customer that you are very, very happy they came in. Do you even know that the person walking in with a pet is a customer? Well, if you don't, then how can you give them the royal care? Yes, you should give every client the royal care, but especially so to your customers. So if it is 10 o'clock and somebody walks in with a dog and the person says, I'm here to see Dr. Smith, if the receptionist says, what's your name? Who are you? What are you in for? That's what everybody does, but look at this. Is this making a dramatic impression on this customer? Is this making this customer say, aha, I've come to the right place or not? This is where you as the practice manager or the practice owner or even the practice team, this is where you need to keep and hold yourselves accountable. What I mean by holding accountable, that what you do when you welcome the person in the lobby, whoever welcomes them needs to understand that it is not the welcome that matters, but the result, the outcome of that welcome that matters. What does that mean? Is that I'm going to welcome them in a way that will leave an indelible impression on them that this is the right place for them. And if I don't get that kind of outcome, then no matter what I think I do, no matter how well I think I welcome them, I'm not doing a good job because I did not get the desirable effect. Therefore, holding people accountable is for their productivity rather than their activity. The activity is to welcome. The productivity is to get the desired, the right effect. And what is the effect that you want to get to make on that customer? If you don't know what it is, then how can you train your CSRs to have that kind of effect? And how can you continue developing this process of increasing the client experience? Remember what on our first webinar we talked about the football analogy where the ball, the client experience, needs to pass from player to player, from position to position, and every pass needs to be designed to the best position, the person in the best position, so that you get closer and closer to the touchdown of your opposing team, and that your opposing team in this case is mediocrity or the status quo. So if you don't like mediocrity, if you don't like the status quo, if you want better results, then the person who has this client experience in their hands, the ball, needs to know what to do with it, not just hold it in place, but to make it grow, to move it forward. And how do they move it forward? By knowing ahead of time what is the outcome of that touch, of the time that the client is in the domain of their control. What is the outcome that they expect to get out of it? Now, here's another important point. If we think that people bring their pets in to see us just because they want us to take care of their pet, we're missing a big important point. Because how can a client judge what quality of service you give when you spay their dog versus 5 other practices? Every practice can spay a dog. There's no way for the client to tell that one spay is better than another. No way whatsoever. The only way they tell that the practice is better for them than anybody else is by the experience they get. I want to emphasize the experience they get. And here's an outrageous statement. A big part of that experience is how entertained they are. People come to us and want to come back to us if they feel that they are entertained, meaning that if they feel that the experience they had at the practice was rewarding, not just the care of the pet, but everything, the whole package was such that they feel fulfilled, that they feel elated, that they feel enthusiastic about having come in. That is the kind of experience that you should strive to instill in your every client, especially when it is a customer.
Yeah. Select a little bit more expansion on this is on a client when they're in the lobby or they are on the phone or when they're coming into the exam room. in order to elevate that experience that we're talking, what do you have to do? You experience for a client might be different. How they feel about something, what are their needs are, what are their beliefs, what is that kind of relationship they have with their pet. That is all important to find out in order to elevate that experience. So you got to practice with the team and be always on the look for identifying the needs of those people, not only need of fixing the dog or a cat, but you have to also fix the needs of the people. Because how many times, actually, if I ask a question, how many times have you tried to dig deep? What is that the client is looking for? What is the relationship that client has with the pet? What are their beliefs about it? How and what they want to happen? That's all part of the experience. Because when you can connect with that, when you can listen to their needs, and when you take action on those needs, that's how they feel like elevated.
Very well. So now, how do we welcome the client when they walk into the lobby? Do you think it is not important? Then I say you're wrong. So look at two case scenarios. It is 10 o'clock and somebody comes in with a dog. One case scenario, unfortunately, the most common in practice, is somebody says, "Hi, can you please wait? We'll be right with you." Or barely a nod, and the client, this person is expected to know what to do, so they go sit at the bench, and then a few minutes later, that the receptionist looks at them and says, "Hi, can I help you?" Now contrast this scenario with the door open. It is 10 o'clock. The receptionist stands up from wherever she is or he is. They come around their counter into the lobby. "Hi, Mrs. Smith. This is Buffy, isn't it?" How do you know it is Mrs. Smith? Because I know that I looked at the appointment book. At 10 o'clock, I have Mrs. Smith coming in Buffy. Mrs. Smith is a customer. Mrs. Smith is her first visit. So I can assume, sometimes I may be wrong, but no big deal. But in 99% of the time, when at 10 o'clock, if a client pulls in, most likely it is Mrs. Smith, even if I don't know her. Walk around the counter. Extend your hand. "Hi, Mrs. Smith and Buffy. How are you doing, Buffy? Such a nice dog. So glad you could make it today. How was your trip down here? Did you find it easy? I'm so glad you come. Let me please take care of you right now, not in 5 or 10 minutes. Let me please take care of you right now." And Jazz, what are some things that we can offer them in the lobby to show them we truly care about them?
Those are, of course, you need to identify yourself and identify the client, and do not neglect the patient, which is the pet, and connect with those, and show the energy that you are welcoming and you mean to, and you're very happy to have them there. And of course, offer them a seat. Go and offer them personally, offer them a seat, just like you'll have a guest come in your home. This client, you must treat every step of the way, must treat them like a guest. Offer them a seat, offer them a beverage, water or soda or whatever you have, a coffee you have, and ask them what else could you do to make their visit quick and fast. Is there anything special need? Sometimes people might be running behind, or sometimes people have something else come up. Asking them for their needs at that time is very important to make them feel at home and make them feel like they're being attended.
Okay, so it is 9:55, and you know that at 10 o'clock a new customer is coming in. And so the next person who comes in, you walk into from behind the counter to the person. If you want to minimize the chance you are addressing the person in the wrong way, instead of saying, "Hi, Mrs. Smith," you can say, "Mrs. Smith," make it a question, "Mrs. Smith," and you extend your hand. If it is Mrs. Jones, she's going to say, "No, I'm Mrs. Jones. I'm also a new client," or maybe someone you don't know. Then you say, "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Jones. I'm so glad you came in. Did you have an appointment?" And then you can go from there. But in most likelihood, it's going to be Mrs. Smith, and she's going to say, "Yes, I'm Mrs. Smith. I'm so glad you're here. And as Jazz was, as mentioned, you offer them a seat, and then you don't ask them, would you like a drink? Would you like anything? Because most people are going to say no, because people don't want to bother, and people are embarrassed to say yes. A better way to approach this, remember, the scope here is to take charge of the client experience, is to say, what would you like, coffee, water, or a soda? This is what I have for you. What would you like? Or here is a cookie. These are some homemade cookies. Jennifer made those cookies yesterday. Don't ask them, do you want a cookie? Offer them the tray of cookies and tell them, these are cookies that Jennifer, our staff, our technician has made yesterday. Let's think of the impression this is going to leave on these people. They're going to feel at home. They're going to release a sigh of comfort inside them, thinking and feeling that, oh my God, I found a second home. This is the place to be. And so don't expect this to happen by itself. It needs to be systematized. It needs to be planned. The whole process needs to be planned, and the whole process needs to be practiced repeatedly until you achieve excellence. That's the only way to have it done consistently. So what's the next step? The next step is to deal with the client for the reason they came in. So Mrs. Smith made an appointment to bring Buffy in for an ear exam. She is a customer. Doesn't matter whether she is a customer or an existing client. We'll use a customer as an example. Then after the initial greeting, after having showed that client that you are extremely happy to see them and that yours is a unique experience for them, and that they should expect more of the same as they go into the exam room. And in fact, that too needs to be systematized. Now you can get down to business. So you say, so Buffy's here for an ear exam, and yes, they need to ask questions about the ear. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Is the client concerned? What if the client is very concerned about that? If the receptionist notices that, then the receptionist needs to say, oh, Mrs. Smith, it looks like you're very concerned that this is a recurring problem. What a wonderful opportunity to create value by saying, well, Dr. Davis is very experienced in ear problems. He is going to take care of you today. So what have you done now? You've created a connection between the great experience the client has had with you, the receptionist, and the lobby, and the doctor. Now the client is trusting the doctor. What a great way to prepare the client to say yes in the exam room. One thing you need to remember also is that although Buffy is in for an ear exam, that it is very likely that Buffy has 2 to 3 other services that are necessary. If it is a new patient, you never seen, don't have history, you don't know what's going on, then they should be instructed to ask them, is there anything else that Buffy's had before? In the past year, has she been to the vet? What for? Oh, she's been to the vet because of weight problems. Oh, she's been to the vet because of chronic diarrhea. Remember, the client doesn't understand all that. The client brings the pet in for an ear exam. But we need to know that. So all this needs to be captured and then brought to the attention of the doctor. So the doctor may ask the client, what about this chronic diarrhea? And lo and behold, although the dog today does not have diarrhea, but maybe a week before, it did. So that's something the doctor needs to address. That's how we take care of the entire pet, and not just for the one reason the client came in. Now, once the receptionist has collected all this information, now we talk about transition. Now another transition. So the client is almost ready to transition from the lobby to the exam room, but how does the receptionist transfer the necessary information and the experience to someone else? It is so common in our profession that one person does what he or she does, and then they leave it to somebody else to figure it out. So that new person asks the same question. The new person asks, what are we doing here? Every time this happens, what are we doing here is a break in the relationship, a break in the experience, and therefore diminished senses that the client is going to say yes and the client is going to want to come back. Now, the other part of the experience in the lobby is when they leave. Remember, there's an experience when they come in, and there's also an experience when they leave. Do not neglect that part of the client experience after the service has been rendered and the client is back in the lobby. It is a common occurrence, especially if the cost of the service was high, that people are going to have a buyer's remorse. 2 or 3 or 4 weeks later, when the problem has resolved, the only lasting memory they've had is that it was expensive. So now that when it is time for them to come back for something else, what they're going to go by is that practice did a good job, but my pet is healthy. I don't see value anymore. I don't remember that my pet was so sick and they took such a good care of it. All I remember is it was cost me $2,000. So now I'm going to bring my pet in just for shots. Maybe I'll go somewhere else where I can get it cheaper. And you've lost the opportunity to continue the relationship. So there's got to be a system in place that when the client is checked out, the client is back in the lobby, that there is a follow-up, that there is an establishment of value of what has been provided during the visit to minimize or eliminate buyer's remorse, so that that time the client spent in the practice is a process, is a link in the process, and not a one-time event.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning it again that the expectations of the clients are to resolve their pet's condition. If it's ear infection or allergies or any fracture or whatnot, they expect us to know that and to fix it. And they would not remember that if it's fixed, because that's the expectation already built in. What's not expected is to make the bridge to the relationship, to the connection we have with them and with their pet. And that is what's going to be remembered. It's an important part of preventing their buyer's remorse, because they will remember the price. They will not remember that you have fixed their dog. They will remember the price of it. And if we have developed the whole team from the phone to the welcome, to the exam room, to the treatment room, back out, and then follow up, if that bridge is maintained, that relationship and the value is maintained, people will remember that. They will forget the event.
Very good. So what are we going to be talking about on our next webinar next week? So now we have dealt with the client in the lobby. We've dealt with the transition between the station. Now we have enough information to transfer to somebody in the exam room. So on our next webinar, we're going to touch on the most important element of the client experience. This is when they are in the exam room, where matters are determined. As you can see, the exam room is a link in a chain. If everything before the exam room has been done properly beyond their expectation, then now if the team, not just the doctor, if the team in the exam room does what they're supposed to do well, they take charge of the client experience in the exam room, then we're going to have a much, much, much higher compliance with everything, not just the treatment of for the reason the pet came in, but for everything else. And not just for that, but we will have also laid out the foundation for that client to be so impressed that they leave our practice telling other 3 or 5 or 10 people how great we are and referring them to us. That is the whole purpose, is to create a client who is a raving fan. That's what we're going to focus on next time. As usual, if you have a question, you can reach us by email at this email, info@newdimensionvet.com, or you can call us directly at those numbers. And for participating in the webinar today, we have another free assessment for you, your team productivity. So we've created a really, really good way, proprietary way for us to tell you and your team how productive they are. And because of for participating in the webinar today, we are now offering it to you at no charge. If you want to sign up for your team productivity assessment, all you have to do is go to our website at newdimensionvet.com and fill out the form, and we'll get with you shortly. We'll set up time to do this productivity test. And now back to you, Stephen.
All right. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. We are opening up for questions at this point, so if anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask, you can do so within either the chat or the questions panel. I do see one question that's been asked that has to do with last week's session, so I'm going to hold off on that just for a moment to see if I have any other questions from this specific session. And so again, chat or question panel over on the right-hand side of the screen. Click over to there, type your question. I'll read that off to Drs. Kornfeld and Mathieu and see what they have to say with answers to your questions. All right, and if I guess I'm not seeing any come through at this point, we will go ahead and ask the question pertaining to last week's session. What do you think is the best phone greeting? So what type of a phone greeting would you recommend when somebody answers the phone at a practice?
It's a very good and complex question. It is not as simple to answer as one might think. I say it's not just what is the best way. I would rather say how is the best way. Because when we talk to people on the phone, only 13% of the message is carried through the words we use. 87% is carried through the tone of voice. So saying great words but using a dull, unwelcoming tone of voice belies the purpose of the words. So in order for the message to be strong, it has to be congruent between the tone of voice and or the energy and the words. So that's what I suggest to focus on. As far as the words, I can give you at least 10 examples, but what I want you to focus on is the tone of voice, is how they greet. How can you just imagine yourself getting a call from a long-lost friend or from a dear relative you haven't heard of from a long time. How happy you are, they called. That's what I'm talking about. It is the tone of voice. And as far as the words, you can use something such as, how may I serve you today? How may I provide you with exceptional service today? I'm here to help you. Just, again, the words are important, but not as important as the message. The whole package has to be in place.
Okay. What specifically do you do at checkout to build the bridge to the next appointment?
Excellent question. So first and foremost, you need to review the value. You need to remind the client why they came in. So they came in with this example for an ear exam. So we need to establish the fact that their pet has received a wonderful care and wonderful service. So how was the care you received today? Do you understand, Mrs. Smith, what you need to do to take care of Buffy's ears? Do you have another question? How was your visit today? Do you feel we paid attention to all of your needs? Did we answer all of your questions? We are here to help. Next, we're going to call you tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, so you set up the stage for the follow-up. We're going to call you tomorrow, depending on your protocol, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, to follow up. And I really, truly want to thank you for your business today. It has been very valuable for us and a good experience for us, and I trust and hope that you've had a good experience today. And that's how you set up. And also, if there is, here's an important point, if the pet is due for anything else, remember what I've said earlier today, that on average 2 to 3 other services are going to be necessary. If the doctor has recommended, say, dental care or weight loss, that too should be brought up at the time that they are checked out. I also want to remind you, Mrs. Smith, that although Buffy's ears are being taken care of, that Dr. Davis diagnosed her as having stage 2 dental disease. I'm going to call you in a few weeks with a follow-up. Not can I call you, but I'm going to call you with a follow-up to make sure that she's doing well as far as her mouth. That's all. So now the client is not going to say, don't call me. Instead, the client is not prepared somewhat for somebody to follow up. And we have a whole webinar on how to follow up.
I also would like to say at that moment when they're being checked out, of course, creating the value is, you walk with them, take them to the car, take their supplies to the car, open the door, and that is also building the bridge in creating an experience. You also say whatever has been done, we are glad, Mrs. Smith, you were able to take care of Buddy. It was such an important thing. We are sure that Buddy is going to feel better, and Buddy is very thankful to you as well. So creating that kind of reassurance that you're not dummy to spend this money. You actually did a beautiful job to take care of your pet. So acknowledging that is important to continue to that bridge.
Any other questions?
I am not seeing any additional questions here in the chat or the Q&A sections. So at this point, I think we'll go ahead and wrap things up. We'll conclude the recording, and I will get the recording posted just a little bit later. You'll all receive an email with a link to the recording so you can review this session later on if you choose to. We will be back the same time next week for part 4. We've reached the halftime here of the 6-part series, and so looking forward to the second half of the 6-part series, leading into more discussion on how to work with your clients more efficiently, more effectively. So any closing words from anybody, either Dr. Kornfeld or Dr. Mathieu?
As you can see from my end, the God is in the detail. It seems to be complex, and it is. It seems to be time-consuming, and it is. But the good thing is once you create this client experience circle, you create it once, and it's going to serve you for many, many years to come. All you're going to have to do thereafter is keep improving it, but you won't have to reinvent it, and it's definitely worth the effort.
Yep. Same thing here.
All right. Well, thank you, Drs. Kornfeld and Mathieu. We'll look forward to seeing you and, I guess, hearing you next week, Wednesday.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.